Hello and welcome back. This is Chris with Marksman Shooting Sports and WeBuyGuns.com in Westfield, Indiana, and you are watching Marksman TV. Today we're going to be taking a look at the top 5 most common handguns that come into our store or have been sold to us over our website so far in 2021. Remember, this video is not a criticism of any one of these firearms. There are lots of reasons as to why these are probably being seen pretty commonly on the used market today, and we will explore those reasons as we go through the video. So if that all sounds interesting to you, please stick around. That's coming up now. Alright, jumping into this first, and this is really in no particular order. We have a couple Ruger EC9S pistols. This one is a flat dark earth. This one is all black. Drop that out of there. And we get a ton of these things in, either through our website or through the front door. Now, the story with these would really begin back, gosh, I want to say it's been about 9 or 10 years ago already with the release of the original LC9 pistol. Now, that was a really nice, sleek, ergonomic, single stack 9mm concealed carry option that was very popular at the time. Gosh, I want to say the price around that time was maybe $300 to $400 at the time, which is generally about where the LC9S pistols have been, making them a really, again, at the time, viable and affordable option. Now, one of the biggest complaints they had about that pistol was the hammer in the back, which gave it a very heavy trigger pull. So a few years later, they would come out with the LC9S, the S being the striker, which gave it the huge advantage of a very, very light, this is disconnected apparently, very, very, very light trigger pull. Much lighter than what had been experienced on the double action only hammer fired gun, of course. Now, that was about the time we opened our store 7 years ago, and I remember we were always flooded with the original LC9 pistols as people were dumping them and going to either other options offered by other companies or going to the LC9S, which was really popular. Again, around that time, the original Springfield XDS was hitting the market, so both of those are really big sellers around that time. Of course, a lot of that would change when we got into the new 1.5 or double stack micro 9s that we're seeing now, like the P365, the Hellcat, of course the Shield Plus, and other things like that on the market. Now, what Ruger would do, and this was kind of the last hurrah for this line, was to come out with the EC9S pistol, which is, of course, what we have here. Now, you would have much wider serration, so less machining on the slide. You would go from a nice bluing to kind of like a matte, I want to say like a Tenerife or a Melanite type finish. The sights would actually be milled as one single integral piece into the slide as opposed to being adjustable like the original LC9S pistol, and I want to say those are basically the main differences that they made, but the biggest thing is they were able to scale down the price in about the $200 to $300 price point, shaving about $50 to $100 off of the retail price. Now, I think it was because of the price point and, again, the nice ergonomics and feel of this firearm, and maybe a lot of people didn't put a lot of gravity into the adjustable sights, being that this is a close-in sort of defensive firearm. A ton of these were sold, and these have been very prevalent, very widely, I guess, sold on the market. So a lot of people have had them. Again, I think because of the new introduction of the new Wonder 9 pistols, especially a lot of them are used on the market and affordable in some instances, a lot of people have been dumping these, maybe wanting to get into something different, or maybe people have just had their fun with them and want to get rid of them, but for whatever reason, we see a ton of these come through our store, and, you know, they really don't sell for that much on the used market, and about, I want to say the low to mid 200 range, respectively, depending on where you find it, but for, you know, a couple $100, really good, viable defensive carry option. And again, they should be pretty commonly found on the used market. So that's one I wanted to go over, the EC9S. Okay, up next is a firearm that has not actually been on the market that long, yet surprisingly, we see a ton of these used in our store. This is a Sarso Moz SAR 9mm pistol that comes out of Turkey. Now, these started getting a lot of popularity maybe within about the past 2 years, so again, it has not really been around that long yet. I imagine gets lost in the noise easily with all the other Turkish firearms that have been flooding the market lately. What you essentially have is something that fits in the market as of the full-size, double-stacked 9mm duty or outside the waistband type firearm, if you will, home defense, range type firearm, which retails brand new for about $399, roughly, give or take, depending on where you find it. Now, you have a double-stacked 17-round magazine. It comes with 2 of them. An external manual safety. The magazine release is reversible, whether you're left or right-handed. You have a a trigger safety on the trigger face here. The trigger has a little bit of take-up, but a clean break. It's pretty well in line with other things in its price range, even from other prominent manufacturers. You have rear and front sight serrations, 3-dot sights that are drift adjustable in the back. Just a nice all-around decent firearm, again, for that $400 price point, which you can see also takes a lot of cues from the HK-VP9. So a lot of inspiration there, undoubtedly. Used, again, I have had so many of these things come in. I can only imagine because last year, of course, there was a huge shortage of firearms and ammunition. We're still kind of struggling with ammo, but firearms are coming back. But firearms are really tough to get, and as a retailer, it was a lot of this Turkish stuff, whether it was the handguns or the shotguns, were actually some of the easiest things to get. So we were actually able to stock quite a few of these and other things like it to get into our store, which is funny. A lot of you guys might remember going into gun stores, it was usually the Turkish stuff that was mainly available. So we had a lot of these and things like it on our shelves when we couldn't get Glocks and M&Ps and XDs. So it would stand to reason that now, a year later, when firearm supply is coming back, we're seeing a lot of these turn up, as people probably got these as their first time firearm, knowing that they're somewhat of an off-brand, not as recognizable as Smith or Glock or Springfield. A lot of people, I think, are selling them or turning them in to get to something either more recognizable, something a little bit higher quality, even though these really aren't bad for the money, or just getting out of firearms in general. But for that reason, I think that is why we are seeing so many of these pop up on the used market. So if you're looking for something, I mean, we are retailing these used for under $300, so because we get so many of them, and even then they tend to sit around. So for a nice quality firearm for the $300, a little bit less range, really not a bad deal, something that maybe you should look into. Or if you like the SAR-9 and you're thinking about picking one up, I would strongly encourage you to look on the used market, as I'm sure these things, if they're definitely plentiful here in our store coming in all the time, it's probably true in other, local areas for you guys as well. So definitely check with your local dealers. If you're looking for something like this, you should be able to find one pretty easily right now. Okay, other ones that I see all the time, are M&P 2.0s. Either the compact or the standard size, 9mm. I get a ton of these, and with that, of course, we also get a lot of the first generation M&Ps. Although, surprisingly enough, I see fewer first gen M&Ps than I do the second gen M&Ps, but I do get a lot of these guys put through our website. I'll go ahead and bring this one back in too. Now, this is one of those that's kind of baffling, and I'm not too sure why, because they are really good handguns, and usually other things that are in this class, like Glocks and XDs and things like that. Of course, yes, I get a good amount of, but I don't get nearly as many as I get the M&Ps. You would say that by sheer volume, of course, it would stand to reason that we would see a lot of these come in. But again, the same is not true of Glock and the Springfield XDs. My only assumption is I have been a fan of the Smith & Wesson line. And kind of listening to people around the water cooler, I guess you could say, at the gun store, is a lot of people who have purchased these have not been a huge fan of the aggressive grip texturing on the firearm, which when concealed carrying, it tends to chafe and things on your skin if you have, raw skin up against it you don't have on an inner shirt or something like that. One of the complaints people also had of the first gen was the heavy and kind of gritty trigger pull. They did improve it on the 2.0, but it's still not the best. There's a lot of take up there, and it's still not as honed in as some other things. Again, this is just my opinion, and I'm trying to figure out, again, why it is we see so many of these. I have carried the first gen Smith & Wesson Shield since they came out, so I've had that thing for about a decade. I still carry it. I love that firearm. When the 2.0 Shield came out, I tried it, but I hated it, and it was mainly for that aggressive grip texturing. Okay, I really like the smoother grip texturing, especially when I'm carrying, and I heard a lot of the same from people, so maybe that's what it is. So if you are one of the many people who have gotten rid of one of your M&P 2.0s, maybe you can leave down in the comment section the reasoning for why you did that. But I see so many of these things come through our website, come through our front door, and it's really gotten to a point where it's driving down our offers on them because I'm getting in far more than I have interested buyers in purchasing them. Again, these, I sell these used sub $300 in a lot of cases, and they're not hard to move at that. These maybe maybe in the $400 range, less than $400 used, not getting a lot of buyers, even though new they're $500 to $550, so I can't really explain why. On Gunbroker, they seem to be going in the $400 range, respectively. But anyway, very interesting. If you were looking for, and again, I think it's a good firearm, a range firearm, a truck gun, a home defense, and you're looking at an M&P 2.0, again, I would look on the used market. There's probably a lot of them in your local area, again, because we are getting a ton of them. But it's something worth taking a look at. Again, not my favorite thing on the market. Maybe a lot of people feel the same way, but interesting nonetheless. But undoubtedly, this is one of the ones I see by far the most of, either come through the front door or on our website. Okay, next up is one that I am always surprised how many of these I get. And I think that this is mainly due to a volume issue rather than a quality issue, but this is the Sig P365. Now, these have been a huge staple in the concealed carry market ever since these came out. Now, we know they had a huge issue on their first early release with firing pin drag. But since then, since, you know, the second year of production, I guess you would say, any of these that we have stocked, new or used, usually find a new home pretty quickly. These are just not firearms that sit around. When people are looking to get into their first or second or third concealed carry option, the Sig P365, if it doesn't go home with them, it's at least one of the top three that they're trying to deliberate over. It's usually this or the Hellcat or the new Shield Plus. Seems to be about what's going on now with concealed carry, but even out of those three, these I think sell the most. Maybe that's a symptom of why we see so many of them, is because people have bought a ton of these and therefore there's more of them to be sold back on the used market. I never hear people really complaining about these, again, after the complaints of the first early release. A lot of people seem to be very happy with them, but undoubtedly we get so many of these in used, which is great because, you know, actually they do retain a lot of their used value. You know, new $500 to $550, used probably seeing them $400 to $450. So maybe they've dropped about $100 on the used market. But again, if you're looking for a P365, check the used market, because you might be able to save $50 or $100 and get a very gently used P365 like this. Now, Sig, another thing that they always do is they're always refreshing their lines with new offerings, like the new X model now. Of course, they came out with the XL and then the SAS. So maybe it's people who are a big fan of the original P365 and want to get into the updated, refreshed, like X models and stuff like that, and then they get rid of their kind of original plain Jane versions like this. I've always liked the more simple the better for me, so I always prefer just the general standard model over the newer ones with the optics and all of that, but that's just me. But anyway, you shouldn't have to travel far to find one of these used at a pretty good price if you're thinking about picking one up. So again, P365s, I see a ton of these, but they are a really good pistol in my opinion. Okay, last but not least. Now, I did start off this video by saying that I wasn't doing this in any particular order, and that was true of the others you just saw. But I did leave this one for last because I get this one far and above all the other ones you just saw. This is a Smith & Wesson M&P Shield, first generation 9mm. And I get a ton of these. I think there's a lot of reasons for that. First of all, I actually still carry mine that I got about 10 years ago. It is my EDC. I've not gone to anything else, and I've tried a lot of the newer Micro 9s and the Shield Plus, but I always gravitate towards this. I always stick with what works for me and what's comfortable. Now, these are known for having the horrible first-gen M&P triggers. This one feels really nice, so this one's either been replaced or really been worn in. Single stack, 7 or 8 round capacity, 9mm. They made them in a 40 as well, at least in the first gen. With a safety or without it, the option was up to you. And this one has upgraded night sights on it. Very simple for what it is. And again, everywhere on the market, as these have been made for about a decade. Now, I think that there's a lot of reasons for why these are everywhere. Number one, they've been made for a long time, so that makes sense. Number two, is technology has come a long way since these. Now, these were sort of the king of the day back about 10 years ago when everybody was moving into the polymer single stack frame line, moving away from like double stack, either steel or metal frames or 1911s. We're transitioning again into packages that are smaller than this that carry more capacity. The Shield Plus, for example, sort of the modern day version of this line, holds 13+1 and it's more or less the same size. Now it has the 2.0 features, which I personally don't like, so I wouldn't move into it. But to get 13 rounds in somewhat pretty much the exact same package is undeniable that a lot of people would gravitate towards that as opposed to something like this. But if you're on a budget or want something that's a really good defensive option, these are great, and you should be able to pick them up used for around the $200 mark plus or minus, and they're everywhere on the market. And I really, even though I get a lot of these, I don't have trouble selling them because a lot of people do like them. They've had them before. Maybe they have one already and want another one, but they do tend to sell as long as they're in good shape with the original box and, you know, upgrades, maybe a few magazines. About 200 to 250 is pretty in line with where these things typically sell. Good, fantastic firearm. So if you're looking again for either a shield or a concealed carry option on a budget, this is something that shouldn't be overlooked. Also, there has been sales on these over the years. Back when the XDSs and the XDS Mod 2s were hitting the market, I remember Smith & Wesson was blowing these things out the door for like $279 brand new plus a rebate with either magazines or like a $50 rebate. So you could get these things at a point in time for just over $200 anyway, brand new. So again, a really, really good firearm. I always enjoy getting these things in because they move, and I just have a special place in my heart for the original M&P Shield. Never had to use one to get myself out of a bad situation, but I've had mine with me pretty often. So there's that one. Don't overlook it if you see it. Well, that is all I have for you today on these. Thank you so much for stopping by and checking out this video. If you enjoyed, please remember to hit that like button. Please also consider subscribing to my channel and hit that bell notification button so you are aware when I am posting new content. Anyway, guys, I'm going to leave you off there. I am Chris with Marksman Shooting Sports and WeBuyGuns.com in Westfield, Indiana. You are watching Marksman TV, and I will see you next time.